Please, oh please, oh please be good. Yeah, so I'm going to see Wonder Woman. And I don't know what to think of this film. I mean, I've been burned by DC at least 3 times. No, 3 times in a row I've been burned by DC. And every single time I seen the trailers and I'm like, oh, that movie looks awesome. I'm so pumped. And then I get pumped. And then I see the movie and it sucks. Man of Steel is a decent movie, but it's got a lot of flaws. Batman vs. Superman, for the most part, is okay. But again, it's got a lot of flaws. Suicide Squad, I actually liked when I first saw it, but the more I watched it, I grew to hate it. And now it's probably my least favorite of the DC cinematic universe. So I don't know what to expect with Wonder Woman. I mean, I really want Wonder Woman to be a hit, because if there was ever a superhero that deserved a hit movie that hasn't got one yet, it's Wonder Woman. I mean, she is one of the main DC heroes. There's Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. It's the Trinity. And we've got plenty of Batman films. We've got more than enough Batman films. We've got plenty of Superman films. Not a lot of Wonder Woman films. I don't read a lot of Wonder Woman comics. Most of what I know of the characters from the DC did a animated movie that was Wonder Woman. It was really good. It was a really good animated movie, and honestly, as long if this movie sucks, I can at least say we have that. So yeah, I know her from the DC animated movie, and I also know her from the Justice League cartoon, which was hands down easily one of my favorite cartoons as a kid. So everything I've seen from the trailers so far I've liked, but again, like I said, it's kind of hard to judge a DC movie because all their trailers are really good. Or I guess you could say all their trailers are very misleading, because they look like good films, but they're not. Gal Gadot, I will say this. When I saw that she was announced as Wonder Woman, I was a little skeptic. And then I saw the picture that they released for Batman vs. Superman, and I was even more skeptic. There was something about that picture that didn't look like Wonder Woman to me. And then I saw her in the movie, and surprisingly enough, she was probably one of the best parts of Batman vs. Superman. And yeah, she completely won me over. So I'm excited that her character is finally getting a little bit longer to shine. And I hope that if the film is good, I hope that she is. It's in large part due to her, because I really dug her performance in that film. I'm just gonna Google Patty Jenkins for a second, see what other movies she's done. Patty, Wonder Woman. Ooh, okay. Interesting. Alright, so Patty Jenkins is the director of Monster with Charlize Theron. That was a good movie. That was a very good movie. Alright, so, yeah. Hopefully she can break the curse of bad DC movies and finally deliver as a good one. And I mean, I still think David Ayer is a great director, but I mean, Suicide Squad was ugh. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts going into Wonder Woman. I have pretty low expectations, but again, I just really want a good film out of this, and hopefully I get a good film. From what I've seen, people are definitely liking the movie, and I hope that's the case for me too. So yeah, that's my thoughts going in. I'll see you guys when I get out.
What are you?
You will soon find out.
PG-13.
Yes! Yes! Oh, yes! Yes! Finally, the DC Universe has a good movie under its belt. And it's Wonder Woman! Oh, yes! Oh, okay. Let me just say, this movie is not flawless or anything. It's got plenty of flaws. But this is such a huge step in the right direction for DC. Let's go over some of the good things in this movie. First of all, it's an origin story, which it's Wonder Woman's first movie. It's kind of granted that it's going to be an origin story. It doesn't fall into the typical origin story problem that most origin stories do, which is that it takes a long time for us to get the character that we want to see. Like in Batman Begins. Batman doesn't really become Batman until the last half of the second act. In this film doesn't do that. It avoids that completely. Wonder Woman, it doesn't take very long for Wonder Woman to become Wonder Woman. And because of that, it feels like they dodged a big bullet that something like Man of Steel did. And honestly, Wonder Woman is a great character in this movie. I like that the Diana as a character is this Amazonian woman who kind of exists on this very black and white scale. For her, there is right and there is wrong, and there's not really any gray area in between. And a lot of this movie is her kind of dealing with that gray area. For once, we actually have a true hero in the DC Universe. And by that, I mean, one of the flaws that the DC Universe has had up to this point in their cinematic adventures is that they try too hard to make their characters relatable. The thing that makes DC characters great is that they're not really relatable characters. They're people that you look up to. They're people that you aspire to be like. You read a comic book about Superman and you think, God, I want to be Superman. Or you read a comic about Batman and it's like, man, I wish I could be Batman. And that's kind of what they fully embrace that here. Diana is not a very interesting character, or she's not a very, like, deeply complicated character. But she is a character. She's a character that embraces kind of her heroic traits. A big part of her character in this film is that she's trying to overcome... Well, her faith in humanity is basically put into question. And she's seeing all these horrific acts that humans can do, and she has a very hard time believing or holding on to that faith that humans at their core are good. And it's essentially kind of her character arc for the film, is learning that, like, yes, humanity is flawed, but even though we have bad in us, that doesn't mean everybody is bad. What makes this film work is its setting. It's set in World War I, which first of all is great because the main villain of the piece is Ares, the god of war. And Ares, setting it in World War II wouldn't make very much sense because World War II had a villain. World War I, not so much. World War I was basically a bunch of countries fighting against each other, and they didn't really know why. Through World War I, we can see that Diana's, when her faith is put into question, she has to deal with the concept that throughout the entire movie, she kind of has this naive belief that, oh, if she can kill Ares, then the war will end. And part of her journey is learning that war is not a man. War is not a single person. War is a concept. Basically, she learns that the evil of man is not a country, or a religion, or not one quantifiable thing. It's something that exists within everybody. And that is such a really, really interesting thing that this film conquers. And that is miles more interesting than anything that Batman vs. Superman, or the Suicide Squad, or Man of Steel did. One of the things that this film does is that it's an actual movie. An actual movie. And what I say that is, most of the DC films from before, they don't really have a flowing script. It's not really a 3-act structure. It's just kind of a lot of the previous DC movies up to this point have just kind of felt like there's a very thin plot outline, and then there's just kind of a bunch of scenes thrown into that plot line, and it's basically just kind of a lot of stumbling about until we get to where the plot eventually wants us to go. Not the case in this movie. In this movie, there is a clear beginning, middle, and end. There is a clear journey that Diana goes through, and I really like that. That is a huge step in the right direction for DC, who has kind of been struggling with a lot of their live-action movies. And I also like that it's not overly dark. A lot of the previous DC films, they try to be too dark. They try to be too serious. And the problem with that is when you're too dark and too serious, people are going to take you seriously, and they're going to judge your movie and criticize your movie a little bit harder. Whereas something is, if it's edgy but also fun, people are a little bit more lenient to it. And I think that this film does that really well. This is not a stupid film. It's not like ridiculously dumb, or it's not like overly comedic. There is some dark stuff in this film. I mean, it's set in World War I, for Christ's sakes. But it still has a nice sense of humor. It still kind of takes time to enjoy these characters and watch these characters and see these characters evolve in a sense. And I like most of these characters. The big character in this movie is Steve Trevor. And they changed him a little bit from what I know of. From what I remember in the Wonder Woman mythos, Steve Trevor was kind of almost borderline misogynistic. And Wonder Woman's a big feminist icon, and obviously Steve Trevor is supposed to kind of represent feminist views on man. You know, they're horny, they're always out for sex, they're blowhards, they think with their dicks. And that's very much what Steve kind of is. In this film, that's not so much the case. This is kind of a different kind of Steve. And I like that, because it definitely kind of evens the ground a little bit more between Wonder Woman and Steve. They're not archetypes, they're characters. There's obviously like some moments, but it never really comes off as like Steve is trying to play her, or Steve is trying to snuggle up to her. It's very organic, and Steve never takes advantage of her or tries to take advantage of her. I remember in the DC animated version, there's one scene where he's trying to get her drunk so that she'll come home with him, and that just makes Steve look like an asshole. In this film, there's no scene like that, and I was very thankful for that. But one of the things that I also noticed is that while Diana does have her character arc, the main character arc in the film seems to be from Steve's point of view. Steve Trevor starts off in this movie, he's very pessimistic. He doesn't really believe that the war can be won. He kind of has a lot of doubts in humanity, and he believes that that there is no hope, in a sense. There's a lot of the film is him telling Diana, he's like, no, you can't do this. We have a much bigger problem to deal with. We have to let some people die in order to accomplish our main goal. And it's kind of through Diana that he learns that every life matters, in the sense. There's this big scene right around in between the second act, where Diana finally has enough of Steve telling her, no, you can't rescue these people. We have bigger fish to fry. And she says, no, if you're sacrificing the majority to stop the minority, then you're not you're essentially winning a war, but at what cost? And Diana eventually steps up and she's like, no, I'm going in there and I'm going to protect these people that need to be protected. And Steve eventually kind of finds his hope in humanity through Diana. And it's such a great... Oh, I love it. I love that this film is making me actually kind of think. And not like in the Batman versus Superman thing where it's like, okay, this film was asking questions but wasn't really answering them. This film is asking questions and and taking a side, essentially. So yeah, like this film is easily the best film the DC Cinematic Universe has to offer. But it does have its flaws, and I did write some of them down. I wrote that the villains are kind of bland. And at first I thought that was a problem, but then I kind of thought to myself, well, I think the point of the film was that ultimately war is the main villain. Or humanity's flaws are kind of the main villain of this film. And in that case, the subject matter is tackled very, very well. It's the individual characters that subject matter is shown through are very kind of lame. Dr. Poison really doesn't have any motivations. Neither does David... Is it David Houston? I want to say it's David Houston. William Stryker from that shitty Wolverine Origins movie. Danny Houston. It's Danny Houston. Danny Houston doesn't really have a character. Ares, the god of war, is just kind of the god of war. He's here to be war. So yeah, the villains are kind of bland, but ultimately the film isn't about them. The film is about Diana and Steve, and that's where this film is the strongest. Honestly, that's really the only big problem. Like, there was a few other problems. The third act does stretch a little bit too long, and it's very CGI heavy and not good CGI heavy. In fact, some of the characters in certain shots look almost like a video game character, and that's not good CGI. Ares, for most of the movie, actually kind of looks like something out of God of War, and I don't mean like his design looks like something out of God of War, although it kind of does. It looks more... What I mean by that is that it looks kind of fake. Some of the action scenes are a little off too. Some action scenes were really well done and really well choreographed and well shot and well filmed. But then there are certain action scenes where I just don't quite understand why it's so fastly edited. Like, it's shot right, but for some reason it's just cutting too quick and it's hard to follow, especially the one at the very beginning. It kind of does even out as the film goes along, and eventually the fight scenes do become a little bit more watchable, but that one first fight scene kind of put me in a really weird mood. But honestly, that's such a nitpick. It's not like that big of a deal. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Wonder Woman. My battery's running low, so I'm going to cut this up. Go see it. It's easily the best film in the DC universe. And by that, I mean it's an actual film. This was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun. It exceeded my expectations. And check it out. You won't be disappointed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.